Did you start your martial arts journey over in California pretty much? You grew up there and everything like that?
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town called Truckee, California. It's sorry, there's like a little fly around here.
Wait, I thought you were just like demonstrating something.
I know, kung fu moments here. Actually, can we start that one over?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Hey kickers, AJ here. So we are back for another mat chat with the awesome, fantastic Kung Fu expert, Mr. Sifu Kuttel, all the way from Switzerland, actually. So thank you for gracing us with your presence here on the mat chat. So I usually let our guests kind of give a little bit of an introduction before we get into the questions and we get more in depth. So could you give us a little bit about yourself here to the audience? Sure.
Well, first, I do want to make a disclaimer. I wouldn't call myself an expert. I'm just a big Kung Fu nerd, like enthusiast. I've been doing martial arts for over 20 years now and have been teaching professionally for over 15 years. And I do two styles in particular. One is Choy Kung Fu, and the other is Yang style Tai Chi. And Tai Chi, everybody knows it, slow moving. It's something I've gotten more into in my training over the years, and it's benefited my Kung Fu training as well. And Choy is one of the bigger Southern styles. In China, it's one of the more popular names. In Mandarin, it's called Zai Li Fo, and it basically translates to two last names. The founder named it after his teachers. So just think of it as like Mr. Choy, Mr. Li, and then Fat is Cantonese word for Buddha. So it's paying homage to the Shaolin temple where his uncle had trained and taught him some of the Shaolin martial arts. He just combined the names together and that's the style, but it's over 200 years old. And it is a forms-based style, but it was also very well known in fighting rings. And at one point, there were a lot of big fights in Hong Kong between Choy Lei Fat and Wing Chun. So they were always going back at each other. So yeah, it's got a colorful history.
But I mean, that's what makes, I think, a lot of martial arts down the line really rich, and it has more depth into like what the meaning is behind the movements and the style. So I think that's a really great background that you have, at least like being able to study Choy Lei Fat and Tai Chi and all that. I know I said expert because in regards to, because Brian over here, like he has a lot of knowledge, and obviously you can even tell with just knowing the history of your martial arts. I feel like a lot of people nowadays, especially when they're first starting up, they don't get exposed to that. And I know I didn't get that as a martial artist growing up. I kind of was more with the westernized, Americanized, like sports karate and such. And that has its own history, but I wasn't necessarily taught that, and it wasn't something really ingrained in my hands. So I really wanted to bring Brian on here today because I think he gives a really good perspective of like what it means to really love your art in a deeper appreciation. So I'm like hyping him up, so I don't mean to put you on blast like that, Brian, but I really do appreciate the effort that you do and like what you know about your martial art. So that's really cool. And I would like to have other people kind of delve into that, if it's not Kung Fu, their own style too, and kind of like researching their own stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important because when you find out where your art came from, you can understand the meaning behind a lot of your techniques. So like in the style of Kung Fu that I do, it was started around the time of the Boxer Rebellion. So there's a lot of techniques, and even in like the weapons that we use in the system, a lot of it was developed for fighting against, like in brawling and in rioting kind of setups. So the techniques were refined over time, but a lot of the movements and a lot of the things that make it strong are from that era. And it was a really combative art.
Martial arts and fighting is cool. I did my opinion with that, but I think martial arts and fighting is cool. I know you're in Switzerland now, but originally you're not from Switzerland. You didn't live there. You actually moved out. You moved out from California, correct?
Yes, yeah. Yes.
So did you actually, did you start your martial arts journey over in California pretty much?
I grew up in a small town near Lake Tahoe. It's a little town called Truckee. And there was only like two martial arts in town. There was Taekwondo and Karate. And when I made the decision that I really wanted to study Kung Fu, I had to go 40 miles away to Reno, Nevada. And actually that's where I found a Kung Fu school there. And at first it was like once a week, and then I got so hooked on it that I was like going almost every day. I would make the trip. So I was at that school for about 7 years. And the crazy thing is, like, I didn't know what style of Kung Fu it was when I started. I just wanted to learn Kung Fu. Actually, at that time, ideally, I wanted to learn Wing Chun because that was what Bruce Lee started in. So I wanted to be like Bruce Lee. And the only Kung Fu school that was publicly open, I guess there were some other smaller operations going on, like people's garages and things. But the big Kung Fu school was in Reno, and it just happened to teach Choy Li Fut. And when I was in there, after like my first lesson, it was like classic. I mean, I'm sure it's a lot of people have that same experience. You go in for your first private introductory lesson and you learn about first how to bow, and you learn like a couple of punches and a kick and then a self-defense technique. And then you go in for your next lesson after that, and then a group class, and then they sign you up. But I was hooked. Like, I saw what they had in there. I saw their lineup of weapons along the wall. I saw the history and the forms that they offered. They were like offering drunken style, and I wanted to learn drunken form. Like, I wanted to be like drunken master. So I was like, oh, I'm hooked. Animals, drunken, Buddha palm, like I get to learn these things. It's so cool. So anyway, 7 years there, and I was graduating from college, and I was working at a lumber yard at the time, which I was working through from high school to college. And I didn't really want to continue my career in the lumberyard. So I didn't really know what the next step of my life was going to be. So I decided maybe I'd go to San Francisco and train at my grandmaster's school, because it was in San Francisco. It's like, yeah, go for maybe the summer, go for 3 months, and then figure out what to do with my life from there. And I contacted them just to see if I could train. My grandmaster's son was running the school at that time. And he was like, well, you have teaching experience. Our program director is actually leaving. And, if you want to, you can actually come here and work. And I was like, oh my God, this is a dream, like, yeah, this is awesome. So I went, and it just turned into like 7 days a week. I consider it like a temple life, because if I wasn't teaching classes, I was in there cleaning or fixing things. And yeah, I was in there for 10 years in that school. And then now I'm in Switzerland.
All the way. So we're sitting across the world now. So you've been doing martial arts now for like how long exactly?
21 years.
21 years. Man, it's a 20 mark that it's like, oh man, I've been in this for a while. But I mean, yeah. That's impressive. That's really impressive though. Because obviously a lot of people that start, they only stick around maybe for like 3 years, 4 years at a time, especially. It's very nice and refreshing to know that there's people that still are in the long haul and for the martial arts game and stuff, and really getting into it. So I guess in regards to moving over to the Switzerland now and pursuing, like, you're still doing your YouTube, obviously, which, by the way, if you guys have not already, please check out Sifu Kuttel's YouTube channel. He actually has 2 now.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I split them up, one Kung Fu and one Tai Chi. Yeah.
So, but in regards to teaching now, how has teaching, I guess, over in America, teaching martial arts classes in America to Switzerland, is there really a big difference besides obviously the language gap, I would assume?
When I first moved here, I realized, yeah, there's a big difference in the language gap. Luckily, in Geneva, there's a lot of English-speaking people, so I don't feel too foreign here. But for a little while, I was doing some side work in the Swiss German speaking part of Switzerland, and in that area nobody spoke English, so I was learning Swiss German and speaking it like in real time. And that was really difficult. But now I'm back in Geneva full time, and everything's in French over here, so it's very multilingual here. The cool thing is, though, people, especially in Switzerland, there's 4 languages spoken in Switzerland. There's not like one national language. So you speak French, German, Italian, or Romansh, which is a very, very small base of speakers. They say it's actually like the closest living version of Latin, which is kind of random, but those are the 4 national languages. And everybody speaks at least 1 or 2 languages. and everybody's very used to the complications that arise for that. So that everybody's used to being like, oh, you know, we don't speak the same language. Do you speak this language? You know, they'll throw out different languages, and there's always issues in communication, but it's always expected. So it's not as bad as you would think. At first, when I moved here, I wanted to get established, and it took some time. So I didn't open up anything right away, and I was a little nervous about the language. And when I was really going to take things off was 2020. I was going to open up my own school and get things going. And that's exactly when COVID hit. So I'm happy in one side because like I didn't have to deal with school closures and trying to figure out how to do all these things with my students. And it also gave me the time that I was going to put into the school. I was able to devote that time to other things, and like doing a lot more video work for YouTube and writing books and things like that. So I will give you a better answer about the differences of teaching later when I actually can teach people over here. But yeah.
I got you. So besides, we'll get into the best-selling author, Mr. Sifu Kuttel. Again, hyping him up. He's like not really officially with that, but he does have a book out there. We'll get to that a little bit later on. You said you still have a Patreon too, right? So people can support you there, and you actually do. Yeah. You kind of do some online classes with students, correct? It kind of a little bit in terms of
yeah. So I do have some distance learning students right now, but the way that it's set up, I don't really like trying to piece things together while we're doing it. And I actually have been working on building my website and doing an online learning program there. So right now I have about like 4 levels of Tai Chi finished and ready, but I have to figure out some things on the website side because I'm doing it all by myself and I don't really know much about web design and things like that. But I have to, once I get that figured out, I'll be going live with that. And then I'll be putting effort into doing the Choy fight program, and then like a self-defense program. And most people know me on YouTube for weapons tutorials. So I'm going to have a weapons program on there as well.
That's going to be fantastic. So anyone interested, I guess, in picking up some Kung Fu lessons from you, you don't have to be in Switzerland with Kuttel, but yeah. You can check them out and look forward to those tutorials coming out soon. And Brian's a really great teacher, a very patient teacher, and very calm teacher in terms of personality wise. So I guess with setting up like your whole YouTube channel and like the Patreon and the website stuff too, in regards to like, I guess, content creation and training, because I know that it's always a common question that a lot of us get, especially for martial arts online kind of thing too, and trying to keep up with the training stuff. How easy is it for you to actually balance it out? Do you stick to a regimen too? Because I actually had a question from Dali Movements. I don't know if they're a follower of you beforehand, but in regards to how to train, how do you train in lockdown, and especially with like your lifestyle with stuff, doing content creation and just normal work, Brian adventures stuff, how do you balance that out actually?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's something where you really have to kind of figure out what your goals are in it, because there's no way that you can just say, I'm going to do everything every day and, you know, level up 100%. If you do it like that, you can maybe last a couple days before burning out, and it's just not possible. So what I've come down to for my own training has been very specific goals. Like I said, I've been focusing a lot on my Tai Chi more lately, and that is something I have been doing a lot every day. And there's not that many forms in Tai Chi, so I'm able to do the majority of my forms in less than an hour. And then there's one of them that's really long. So some days I just focus on that one. Some days I focus on the rest of the forms. But yeah, I have to split up my workouts for that, because I do the Tai Chi training, and that gets movement training. It hits a lot of the things, you know, stance training and just general martial arts. And then I'll do my Kung Fu training. But then I'm very selective on what I can practice, because most of the time I'm practicing in the apartment here. The weather's getting better, so maybe I'll go out to the park, but it's still been pretty cold here in Switzerland. So it's not really been nice to go out and train. And then where I go to video for my YouTube channel is I rent some time from an Aikido school. So I get some mat time over there. So earlier this year, my goal was to film as many videos as possible. And I have a ton of scheduled for the rest of the year. Actually, I'm almost done filming videos for this year, and they are all scheduled to release, which That's kind of nice now. But now I have, I used to set, like, out of the times that I would go in, I had one day just dedicated for training. And I had that game plan when I was, heading over. I knew exactly what I wanted to accomplish out of that training session, what I wanted to do. But and the hardest thing I would say is the lack of having partners, sparring. The Aikido school doesn't have any heavy bags or equipment to hit. So that's one thing I've been missing a lot, is actually hitting things. It'll be there eventually, but that is one thing I feel is missing a lot in my training right now. So shadow boxing and kung fu forms and leg lifts and push-ups and sit-ups and things like that. That's where we're at.
Everyone's deciding, like, the itch to hit something, I feel like, especially with lockdown, if you're being strict with that. Man, you do, kind of going into point, you actually do have skill, craftsmanship in woodwork to, like, build dummies and stuff too. Have you been able to actually get the, you're in an apartment or something, I don't know if you'd have the space, but do you actually have the, like, space or, like, possibly the time to, like, build something
Last
like
year,
that?
I was able to make a spring dummy. So it's a giant suspension spring, and then I put a bunch of bamboo in it. So it's kind of like an old traditional heavy bag in a way. It's super cool, but I can't use it to its fullest extent because I can't attach it to the floor. So if I kick it too hard, it's just going to tip the whole thing over. But I can't wait to use that because it's awesome for conditioning. I just have to find a place to put that up. Even if I did build a wooden dummy, I could do it. It's just hard because one of the most important things, and I've been thinking about this a lot, was I had designs for lightweight wooden dummies and apartment-sized wooden dummies, and they work great. But I realized the biggest thing that helps it is the weight. It has to be kind of big. It has to be heavy because that allows you to hit it hard. And that's what you need. When you're hitting those arms, if you just hit it and it just kind of shifts over or falls over, it's not worth your time. So to really get the full effect, you have to have something heavy there.
Hopefully you find a place to, like, finally, like, lock that thing down so you can go let out all that lockdown rage, pent up lockdown rage in there.
Yeah.
But that'd be fun. Kind of go back to teaching. Have you actually gotten a lot more student interest actually during the pandemic because of, I guess, the only way really to get any kind of martial arts instruction during that time, or during this time, I suppose, safely, would be online classes. So have you actually seen a lot more people who have interest in like taking up martial arts during the pandemic?
Yeah, there's a lot more interest right now for sure, but it seems like everybody wants to do it for free. I mean, the way I have it set up is basically people know me from YouTube and they're used to getting free videos from YouTube. So there's a lot of requests for videos doing this or that, asking for a specific progression, like on a curriculum base. And that's something I've always kind of avoided because my YouTube was first to just inspire people to get into Kung Fu and give them some things that I wish I would have had when I was younger. So, like tips that they could work on at specific levels or some at any level, and just things that could complement their training. But I didn't want to set up an actual like free online teaching program because to me, I feel like it's best to learn in person. I've been coming more to terms with it that you can learn online, but you're still missing such a huge part of the martial arts experience by not working with somebody who actually has the experience, because there's a lot that goes in on feeling, on impact. Like one of my favorite examples is if I hold, just like kicking shield, I can close my eyes and I can feel when the student is doing the kick right or wrong. I can feel exactly which part of the foot they're hitting the bag with because I've been doing that for so long as a teacher. Like I can give them the correction. I don't have to see it. And I can give them the feedback, like, you feel it on this part of your foot. Oh, well, this is why, you should be kicking with this side and here. And do you feel this, in the hip when you kick, or, all these things. And you can't do that from online. Like I can correct the appearance of it, I can correct the shape of it, but I can't correct the power behind it, the positioning, the structure, the alignment, all of those things, because those are things that I have to do a lot more with feeling. So yeah,
it makes complete sense too, because it's something that I don't know. people getting into martial arts, there's a like, I guess like there's a chunk of it, not everyone obviously with that, but there's a good chunk of people that's like, oh, I want to do martial arts, but I guess there's still a physical aspect of martial arts you really can't avoid if you really want to make it practical, I guess.
Yeah.
Obviously with the performance aspect, there are some technicalities that you probably can pick up online, might be a little bit difficult to kind of like fix up, but it's not impossible, just difficult, really difficult. But if you're trying to learn martial arts to hit something of to any degree, whether it be hitting a bag or doing it for sparring or like self-defense, like you are going to have to eventually come in face-to-face contact with a person or someone else to help you correct that properly, because you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So,
and it helps with their forms though too. It helps the performance. I mean, it's very conceptual too, and it's very hard to get that across when somebody hasn't had the experience of hitting something correctly, because when you're doing your performance, when you're doing a form, you should be punching like how you would be punching someone or something.
Very true.
And that's the essence of it. That's the fighting essence. So rather than just me reaching out my arms fast, in my mind, I'm trying to recreate the feeling of actually hitting something. So it's no longer like, I'm just trying to get my arm out, but I'm actually trying to put some body behind it, tucking the ribs a little bit more. I'm engaging underneath here with the lats, like my shoulders engaging, and I'm actually pressing into a target. And that intention is very, like I said, it's conceptual. It's hard to even just explain, but that's something you try to get through repetition of actually hitting things and then trying to say like, this is what you're doing in the form, making the mind connection and then getting the body to follow, because the mind will pick this stuff up fast, but the body takes so long. It takes a lot of repetition to put those two together.
Being that it's also kind of like that beginner mindset, there's, I guess, a lot of people that start going into Kung Fu or get exposed to Kung Fu sometimes have like, I guess, really broad assumptions about the art, right? So we're kind of delving into it. So I guess what's like some common assumptions that you come across that you've had to debunk and help someone to kind of see it a little bit more clearer with like going into Kung Fu as a martial art and as it's meant to be in a sense. Yeah.
So I would say you get two misconceptions on it's actually very opposite sides. One is the people that are, and you hear this all the time, especially coming from combat sports and MMA, our Kung Fu doesn't work in the ring. This is not Kung Fu. You don't see Kung Fu, and people, why don't I see Kung Fu in the ring? And what people expect to see are shapes. They expect to see like a low horse stance and a tiger claw, and like a big flowering movement, and then a big swinging uppercut punch. And it's not Kung Fu unless it's a snake hand. That of course you're not going to see that in the ring, because like it's not meant for that. That's on the performance side. When you look at like the basic stances, it's weight distribution and training. So difference between a horse stance and a cat stance. If you're developing the leg muscles when you're holding these stances for a long time, then yeah, there are times where you can actually drop down into a stance and it's useful, but you don't have to be shifting from this stance to that stance all the time. But you look at the weight distribution in your own training, and then you put it into movement, you put it into the right context. So horse stance is a 50-50 stance. That's your basic fighting stance. You move forward in your horse stance, you move back in your horse stance. You don't have to be super level when you're fighting. Cat stance is just the weight shifted back so that your front leg has less weight on it so that you can use it to kick, or you've used it to step back, that transitory stance. Okay. And then like a twist stance, you don't have to like twist and sit down and do a snake hand. Like it's a great pose, but if you look at the twist, it's hip position. You're putting that back hip all the way forward so you get more reach, more power. If you're punching, it doesn't mean that you're going to hold it there for a long time. When you twist, you're just hitting that for that second, and then you're moving on to the next thing. Or it can be seen as like a pivot for like throwing a roundhouse kick or a side kick from the back leg. So that's something where people are looking for shapes, and they're like, of course, it's not going to be practical to do, like a low, splits and then snake hands in MMA, because yeah, it's not going to have the knockout power of like a punch, So, but on the other side, and this is actually kind of the side that I was kind of got me into Kung Fu, was watching movies and seeing like Drunken Fist, like Drunken Master. Oh, I want to learn Drunken style because it's so powerful. They think that it has to be that way for it to be the most powerful version of it. Do you think you have to do only tiger claw to have a strong strike to the face, or you have to do, very specific to the form for it to work? And pretty much both sides want to see the same thing in the ring, and they're both not going to get it because it's just not how you do it. You have to look at Kung Fu as a training art, and the low stances work the leg muscles. The lower you go, the harder it is to move faster, right? So you're developing your agility, weight distribution, and just your mobility at that. The forms, lots of memorization, and people just leave it at that part, but it's training movement too. So if you can train power in each movement, you're learning how to, you throw a punch from this position, and then learning what you can do depending on your stance. If your waist distribution is back, now you have a couple of options with the other hand, whether you're going to go in with this, that, and don't think of it as strictly as it has to be like a tiger claw. It could be this punch, and instead of doing a tiger claw, I just do another punch. So if you try to adhere too much to the laws of it and too much to the script, you're going to find that it's not effective. And if you expect to see shapes, that's not going to be effective. But yeah, I think that's the problem, is people expect too much out of it in two different ways. So that's pretty much what the question was, right?
Yeah. No. That was a perfect. Yeah, you're perfectly good with that in terms of like those two assumptions. I think that makes complete sense because, I know I kind of fell on the. I guess I technically fell on the Kung Fu doesn't work, and I think it's because I wasn't really exposed to anyone that really knew the art like in depth.
That's it too. Yeah. There's a lot of people that learned either just a form and didn't learn how to learn applications, or they learned from a book and they wanted to adhere to these philosophies and principles that they've heard, because that it's all fun to talk about martial arts, and then you take it on a philosophical level and Chinese martial arts love that. The hard versus soft, the using opponent's energy against them, that kind of stuff. And when you try to strictly adhere to those things, they're like, oh, well, this is a soft art, so I can't put any power in my punches. It just has to be very soft. And that's where a lot of people lose the art itself. And, it's a lot of people, people can just open up a school. I've heard of a guy that it was like at a parade or something, some kind of gathering. And this guy brought over his students, and they looked very inexperienced. And this guy just striking up conversation. It was actually my friend that talked to him. And the guy was like, yeah, well, I studied this art for about 2 years. And then I figured I'd learned enough. So I went and opened my own school. And my friend's like, what? 2 years? Like, you can't get, there's some schools that maybe you get close to a black belt there, but no school is going to get you a black belt in 2 years. And you're not going to have any depth to just start teaching in that 2 years. Like, it's crazy. So anybody can open a school and teach. And a lot of people resort to books to learn forms just so they can teach, oh, well, I know this and I know that. And that's where the systems get watered down. That's where it gets a bit of a reputation.
2 years, geez. Like, if I heard that, I think as a kid, I would be like, oh, if I trained martial arts for 2 years, I can open up a school, mom and dad invest in me. I guess I don't know if it's just sometimes the teaching methods with it, or like you said, it just really, I don't know. I don't know if it's also because of what I've been exposed in the martial arts community too. I just always found that sometimes a lot of the McDojo, like starting to go McDojo style of like teaching in schools, happen to be a lot in the Kung Fu spectrum of that. And I think that's very unfortunate because, like I said, it has a very rich culture and history and meaning to the movements that I only learned how to appreciate once I got older, more mature, and found an instructor actually knew what they were talking about for the time that I was with them. Do you find that to be like the same thing? Because obviously there's McDojos in every like style of martial arts. It's not just Kung Fu, definitely, most definitely with that. But do you find that to be kind of like a similar thing that you find, or?
Yeah, and I think one of the problems too is that when people look at Kung Fu, they expect forms. So it's a forms-based system, and you can look up online. There's thousands of Shaolin forms on video, Shaolin instruction videos and things like that. So, you can do it for pretty much any of the martial art. Like even my grandmaster, he has like He has like 30 or so videos out there, and they're all just to do the forms. But that's the problem. People think that learning the form is everything. And then once they know the form, then they have, they've leveled up their Kung Fu. And they start teaching just from watching that stuff. I mean, I had for my Sifu, my grandmaster's son, he was telling me that many years ago, he was doing the California circuit tournaments, and he met some guy, and the guy's like, "Oh, hey, thank you so much, Sifu." And he's like, "I don't know you." The guy's like, "Oh, no, you competed last year, and you did this form, and I videoed it, and you taught me this form. Thank you so much." And he was like, no, this is not right. Like, he didn't know what to say at the time, but like, he tells me that story. And then he also, that's also something for me, like, because in my position, I do a lot of forms, videos and stuff on my channel. So that's always been kind of the rule, is like, don't do the whole form. Edit it is fine, this and that, but you can see who's actually learned from a school. Is, if they're going to just try to pick it up on YouTube, even if it's not the whole form, it's going to be enough to satisfy them. But if they're looking to have some legitimacy in the art, they need to learn from a legit school. So that's the other thing. But yeah.
Do you have a checklist of, I guess, things that people can kind of look out for to see if a Kung Fu school has some roots in actual history and pretty good mentorship?
Yeah, so for sure. I would say it's also one of those polarizing things. Is lineage is one thing. So lineage is one thing that's a good and a bad thing. The good thing about it is you can see that it was a legit Chinese martial art. So they actually have a legitimate background that's been passed down to them. On the other hand, if the instructor is too caught up on lineage, this art is like, you're going to find this a lot, actually, especially in Wing Chun. And it's not that I'm calling out the art. I have one of my very good friends is a Wing Chun Sifu, and he's also on YouTube, Kung Fu Genius. You guys should check that out. You know him, Alex Richter.
Yeah.
But he says, like, all these guys, talk about how important and how pure their lineage is, and because they, their teacher is this generation underneath Yip Man, and because Yip Man is the best Wing Chun guy ever. Everybody's like, this is the only way of learning Wing Chun. So they're putting their lineage on a pedestal to the point where they're not even going to try to improve their martial arts or improve their teaching because it's from this lineage. So you got to watch out for that too. If they're too into their lineage, or if they have no lineage, those are red flags. But there's a school recently I saw that the name of the art was the same name as a different traditional martial art, a traditional Chinese art. And their lineage says, well, we're not related to that art, but our teachers developed this, 30 years ago, and they go to China and they learn from many masters and they incorporate it all together. So if you have way too many lineages, way too many arts in one, I think it's probably not, they're all probably watered down. So I would say, look, for Kung Fu, you have to look at the lineage and look at the amount of arts. It's not unusual for a school to maybe have 2 arts or 3 arts in some. If somebody's got 5 or 6 different Chinese martial arts and they're a master, or they hold, very, very high ranks in those arts, it's probably not true.
I think that's a little bit translatable to other martial arts school too, but definitely if you're going to the Kung Fu scene, Sifu Kuttel dropped you some knowledge there to help you out there with that. Our opinions and stuff, but hopefully it guides you towards the proper direction if you're looking to actually pick up a Kung Fu art, if you need to with that. While you're training, right? So I would like to assume, because everyone that starts out their martial arts journey, they had their own, I guess, assumptions of their martial art and their own problems and things they had to get over, and which is why they're able to bestow, I guess, really wise advice. And I would consider you a very wise person in regards to just being out there and experiencing things and teaching and just working with a lot of people. I think you have a good experience and good background. So I guess what are some assumptions that you actually had to re-teach yourself about, I guess, coming into doing Kung Fu, that you try to kind of press on your students or anyone else that kind of goes in there, hey, don't make the same mistake kind of thing, if you had to think of it. I don't know if that question makes sense completely.
No, it makes perfect sense. Yeah. Like, so I would have told myself to spend, like, if I would talk to the younger me getting into it, there's going to be lessons that you learn along the way, and everything you learn is like a spiral. So you're going to find yourself circling around and hitting some things again. But each time, as long as you're progressing, as long as you're putting your heart into training and you're training correctly, you're going to be refining things. So it's not as big of a circle and you're not hitting the exact same spot before. So each time you're traveling around this, you're going to be refining things, and it's going to be closer and closer to the goal you want, but you're never going to be perfect. So get to terms with that. There's always going to be corrections and details. You can work on your speed, but it may affect your power. And then when you work on your power, it may affect your accuracy. And when you work on your accuracy, it may affect your speed. But if you keep refining each of those things, each time it's going to be less and less, and you're going to be closer and closer to that ideal martial artist that you want. And I'd say it's really important not to disregard certain lessons. So there's certain things, like, of course, you should always look at your martial arts. I don't want to say with a skeptic eye, but always critical. So the lessons that you're being taught may be for a specific reason. And your instructor may say something to you that you may think is like, this is silly. This is not, why I do this. Like, I don't need to learn that, or that would never work. Because at some point you're going to return back to that moment, and you're going to realize that, yeah, they actually knew what they were talking about. It's just that it didn't seem feasible for you at that time. So there's going to be some things. And that's like, I'm not talking about like throwing fireballs or anything. I'm just talking about like certain techniques, whether it's like catching a kick or, like doing certain things. You may be like, oh, that wouldn't work for me because I'm small, or I'm big, or I'm slow, or I'm fast. Like, that's not how I fight. Remember those lessons, because they will come back and they will be useful for you down the road. And stretch out and drink lots of water. I can't say that enough. That was like every class that I taught. End of every class, we close up. All right, you guys, see you next time. Stretch out, drink lots of water, because if you're sore and dehydrated, it's just going to ruin your training, and it's going to ruin your day. And that was if you ask any of my students that I taught in person, if you start off by saying hydration starts, and they'll finish the sentence, because that's another thing I always say too, because hydration starts at the beginning of the day, not at the beginning of the workout. Like, you have to be drinking water all day to keep your body hydrated, and so that you're in peak physical condition to be able to train and reach those next levels. So yeah.
I feel like you need some Sifu Kuttel like training quotes now, or something like that.
Yeah.
Some like one of those shirts going on, doing like a Sifu Kuttel line with that, which you actually have merch too, which if you guys want to support, you guys can check out that on his website, I believe, right? Your merch is on your website?
I have links to it, yeah, because I do it through Teespring, and they show up on some of my YouTube videos too. But yeah, it's there. It's just because I like the art side of it. I'm not, yeah. There's a cool Axe Gang one.
Oh yeah, that's actually pretty hype, actually. So check that out. If you guys are a fan of Kung Fu Hustle and like Axe Gang inspired t-shirt, check that out too. That's a really nice one, actually. Besides hydration, staying hydrated, right? Roybot06, again, I don't know if he's a fan of yours, but he dropped the question actually asking, how do you deal with training post-injury, actually? How do you train with post-injury? And I guess, like, if you are injured, since we'll add that in there, like, how do you actually go about doing your Kung Fu training in those situations?
So first thing I would say is, and this is super important, no matter if you guys do Kung Fu or not, your mindset, you always go by your memory of where you were before you were training. So the first thing you want to make sure is that you accept that you're not going to be at the level that you were before your injury when you get back into training. You're going to start feeling comfortable once you start moving again, and you're going to want to push yourself up to that level, but your body's not ready for that. So be patient, okay? Allow yourself to be injured, allow yourself to recover. First and foremost, like, you're not going to recover from your injury from that. And I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent too, but this is how people prolong injuries and recovery. from sparring, one of the most common injuries is sprained thumbs. And it happens a lot. People catch an elbow with their thumb while they're punching, and they're going to be, oh, you know, it hurts. Oh, you know, I got to sit out of class or whatever. I had so many students, and I did it myself too. Your thumb will feel better by the next session. And you're going to go, oh, it's okay. I won't do anything. And then you get into sparring and you're like, oh, no, this feels good. I'm all right. All right. And then you hit something just enough to re-injure yourself, and it prolongs it. And I've had a sprained thumb that lasted for over a year when it should have just been, you know, the typical 4 to 6 weeks. You don't have to, unless you have like a fight, unless you have something huge, this goal that you're going for. If you're just training to get better, let yourself recover. Okay. So first and foremost, let yourself recover. Super important. Don't think that you're going to be at your highest level when you return. And during the point of injury, people are always like, you know, the most simple answer, like if you hurt your leg, just focus on your hands. It's really hard to do. It's not an easy thing to do. And a lot of people have a hard time dealing with it. And so what I would suggest is doing it on an extreme level. So say you hurt your knee or you hurt your ankle. The whole idea of just using your hands, like force yourself to sit down and punch. Force yourself to sit down and do a form. Not only is it a different way of having to train, but it totally eliminates the chance of you doing something dumb with your leg and prolonging the injury.
That makes sense.
Don't be afraid. Like if you're in a combat art and you're always hitting stuff, you're going to have to take the time away from hitting things to let your bones, to let your, you know, any of those injuries recover. So get good at your shadow boxing, or, you know, punch something that's so light that it's not going to affect you, has no feedback. Like hang a string and punch a string, because it's still going to give you your training and you're still going to stay up to date on that one. You're just not going to be putting yourself under the pressure that's going to prevent the injury from recovering. So that's key. And I hope that helps.
Hope so too. I like, there's definitely different schools of thoughts, but again, it really depends on your goals, like you said, for training. If you're just doing it to improve, Kuttle's advice is pretty straightforward on that. I think that you want to have a long career of martial arts. Best thing is to recover. I think I've been fortunate enough that I haven't had any really serious injuries. So I think the worst I've had is like a sprained ankle or something like that, and like sprained fingers. So I think I've done the same thing that you've said before. Just keep training, because it doesn't really bother you, but you make it last longer.
Yeah.
And I think, I guess the thing is with injury too, especially with like flexibility, right? Like if you injure something, sometimes you don't get that full range of motion back. It's just something that's permanently there. So if you want to kind of keep your martial arts ability as intact for as long as you can, do what Kuttel said. Do what Sifu Kuttel said. Recover.
And actually, for the instructors out there too, because that was something I had to deal with a lot, where I would injure myself, but I still had a full teaching schedule. And it's not like you just can stand there and bark orders. Like you still have to do the movements with everybody. And what I would say is really put some emphasis into your warm-ups for that. You're going to take more time to warm up to get, like if it's a muscle strain, you're going to have to take the time to really warm yourself up before you teach. So make a plan for that as well. And research your injuries. Look, there's like, that's one of the beautiful things as well, for like all these videos on YouTube. There's so many physical therapists. There's so many people that have ideas and options for you to help the recovery process. So yeah, that's it.
good words from Kuttel right there. Okay, so we're actually heading towards the end of this interview, so we're going to have some kind of rapid question things here and there, and then obviously like some shameless plugs for you, so that way people can help support and then give you a shout out there. Random question from Brew Nee. He's asking, who is your favorite martial arts movie actor?
It's tough now. It's so tough now because there's so many more people out there than when I had started. So I will always say who got me into it. My first inspiration was Bruce Lee, but truly the guy that really got me into Kung Fu forms and everything like that was Jackie Chan. So I would say that, but I mean, you start watching Jet Li, you start getting into the modern day people, and there's so many like amazing stunt people out there that a lot of people don't know because they're doubling for other people. And after a while, you start recognizing who's in what. And I actually am super happy to say that I know a lot of people now in the stunt industry, and I can,
I was about to say, aren't you in a couple like short films or something like that out there? Like possibly some works and stuff that like are probably gonna flash up a few B-roll footage from past things. So Kuttle's been also like besides Sifu Kuttel, he's also action star Kuttel sometimes when he visits. But actually, besides teaching, do you just kind of do that for fun at the moment, or would you want to like kind of dabble in that more actually down the line, depending?
It's a lot of fun. I really loved working with you guys, and that's something I would love to do again. I don't know if it would be a full-time pursuit for me. I don't know if I can get away from teaching. I just love it. So I think that's the first and foremost for me is sharing Kung Fu, but it's so much fun. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the next time I can travel and I can head out and visit you, and we can do more fight scenes and things like that too. So
everything's safe again. We can talk to people in person instead of through a screen. Soon with that. Besides teaching and obviously, action star Kuttel, do you have any other hobbies? I know you dabble in some other art. I think you mentioned earlier. You do like graphic art technically, right? And stuff like that.
So it's been more like work based because I did the illustrations for my book, and I always used to do all the graphic design for the school, and like all the posters, promotional stuff, all of that stuff, anything you see associated with me on my website or YouTube or any of those things, that's all my own. I do the photos, the touching up, all the Photoshop stuff. I do a lot of the graphic design. I did the cover design and the illustrations for my book. So a lot of that stuff has been kind of more work oriented, but I love to draw. It's what got me through school. I would take my notes and draw all over my notes, and it helped me remember, and it helped me pay attention in class. So I have tons of sketchbooks. I have tons of dumb art that I will never share publicly, but maybe I'll show you some of those dumb sketches one time. But and I love watercolor actually. So I was in college, I did a lot of watercolor training and classes and things like that. So yeah, and I also love woodworking too. So I've built a lot of Kung Fu apparatuses. I've made a lot of wooden weapons, wooden dummies and things like that. So, and I try to share that too. I broke my 2-section staff. So one of my upcoming videos is how to make a 2-section staff.
Was it that clip or something like that you posted on Instagram a while back that you like randomly broke it or something?
Yeah, it was the wood of the staff. I was limited on my options for wood when I first moved here. My French was not good enough to ask for the proper type of wood. So I ended up getting a closet pole, and the way that they make those, like the wood is not bad. It's just that they glue pieces together, and then they'll usually paint the outside, so you can't tell if it's just a solid piece of wood or if it's 2 pieces that are kind of glued together like this. And that's where it broke, is just too much pressure on that part. So yeah.
Man, I thought it was some like chi energy thing that happened, like too much chi.
I wish I was so strong. Yeah, no. It was the wood that failed.
I gotcha. Is there other martial arts that you actually have experience in as well, besides Kung Fu and Choy and Tai Chi?
In the first school that I was training in, we had a self-defense program integrated into with the Kung Fu training, because my first Sifu he was a Kempo instructor. So we had Kempo self-defense techniques at every level. So I do have a little bit. I wouldn't say I'm any authority in it, but I do remember a lot of my old techniques, like flashing wings and opponents at sides.
Yes.
You know flashing wings?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait, there's like, I don't know, Courting the Tiger was one, but we had a thing like that. Courting the Tiger, Dance of Death. That's the
Dance
one
of Death. Yeah.
My God. Uh-huh. It's like the coolest one because it's the first one that you like do like a major takedown too in the Kempo system. I think it's like Dance of Death, like the one of those. I don't know. It's like some weird names in there.
So sometimes. My Sifu chopped that though. He chopped it to go after the takedown, and then you do like the 3 strikes. We did a kick and then ended it there. We didn't finish the actual like jumping across and dance part of it. So that's why I can't say I'm really super, I wouldn't call myself ranking or holding anything in Kempo, because there's a chance that a lot of those are modified techniques, but I do understand like how the art is constructed and the engineering behind it. So yeah, that's cool. I've taken like a class here and there with somebody. I did some jujitsu for a little while, just between time to train and training partners and things like that. I was such a bad student. Like I was like the guy that, you know, you see come in and you're like, oh, he's here. Finally, it's like 3 weeks, he shows up, 2 weeks, he's gone, whatever, you know, so. Yeah.
Is there oh my god, coming from a teacher, like, you know, you teachers like, yep, I was that kid or that student, at least with that guy. I apologize for my behavior. Any other martial arts that you're hoping when things are like open up again that you would like to delve into or like possibly pick up alongside with your Kung Fu training? So
I've been thinking about this a lot lately, just because of you know, when I open up my own school and I have students come in to train, I don't know if I'm going to have, it's going to be a time before anybody's going to be, unless they have prior experience, and unless I'm lucky like that, if I'm starting somebody from scratch, it's going to be a while before they're going to be a good training partner for me in sparring and fighting. So I was thinking of looking at something else just to work out and fight again and spar again, because that's been something like, it's so lacking from my training, and I really miss it. So yeah, I might be doing some kind of classes around somewhere else, do some training for that, just to get that out of my system and get back into it. I'd love to learn some other arts, but I just don't know, between having the devotion that I have to the arts that I teach and training daily in those arts. And I feel like even my training times aren't enough to really, you know, give it the best go that I can. I don't know if I could seriously get into a formal art without, I don't know, to give it the full respect it deserves. So that's a tough one.
Yeah, that makes sense though, completely with that. Dally Moves was actually asking, would there be any more books like Monkey Kung Fu that you're going to be releasing? And then I guess we can kind of seep into the whole how you support Sifu Brian Kuttel online. So yeah.
Yeah, so definitely. It's interesting. I have a number of books in the works, and it sucks because, you know, I'll type out and work a lot on this book, and then I'll be like, oh no, I still want to add to this one, and then I want to add to this one. So it kind of slows the progress down on a lot of them. But I have a couple of main ones that I do want to get out. I'd like to get one out about crane Kung Fu, but that one's probably not going to show up until after I have one more geared toward the fundamentals and the fighting side of Choy, because I want to make sure that the art is represented at its combat side before I go into the fun, you know, the crane or tiger or anything like that. So definitely lots of books on the way though. I wish I had more hours in the day to type, and I wish I could type faster.
Oh man, but that's exciting then too. I know Joey got a copy of that, and I know I've looked through it. I have not actually read it yet, but I very much I think it's really cool that you have that knowledge and that experience to actually put something now into physical record now for other people that want to kind of understand more about Choy and like specifically the monkey style that you're having there. Because besides being an author, so look out for that. You can also buy his book on Amazon, right? It's still available on Amazon still. So you can check that out on Amazon Prime, I believe. So we've got 2-day shipping. Take advantage of that where you are in the world, I guess. Where else can they find you, Sifu Brian Kuttel? Where can they find you just for?
My main thing is on YouTube. You just type in Sifu Kuttel, but it's Kuttel. It's not Cuddle. Yeah, so that's the only thing. But I think if you do type in Kuttel like that, you may still get my videos. I have 2 channels, one for Kung Fu, one for Tai Chi that I just started earlier this year that is very small. But if you wanted to focus on Tai Chi, that's where all of my Tai Chi videos are. So if you want to get into all of it, follow both, because it's just 2 videos a week. And then I'm on Patreon as well, and I do Patreon exclusive videos that I never release on YouTube. So if you wanted to learn more in-depth applications and A couple of ongoing series that I do are, I call it Everyday Arsenal, where we take everyday implements and use them for self-defense. It could range from using a belt for self-defense or a frying pan or, lots of different things. That's always a really fun one too, because it goes into more like the engineering side, and I get to do some stress tests on things. So that one's a good series. And I will do weapon series as well. So coming up actually is the 9-tooth rake. I don't teach the forms, but I teach techniques and I teach a lot behind the movements themselves. So that's pretty cool too. Last year I did double daggers. Just earlier this year, we were doing Tai Chi double fan. So that's also every week too. So if you follow both channels and Patreon, you get 3 videos a week. You don't get it. Yeah, you get too much of me.
You got a lot of cuddle right there, cuddle buddies, right?
Yeah, cuddle buddies
over there. But that's great. So you're online everywhere. It looks like if you type in Sifu Kuttel, probably in Google search, you'll probably find a lot of his outlets there. Obviously Instagram, follow him on Instagram as well. And he has like Instagram guys that they actually showed me. You showed me one day actually about that, where he sorted out his tutorials and some information clips on there. So if you are perusing around and happen to be on your phone and want to like look for some quick bits and see what he's all about, you can check that out on his Instagram. We talked about your merch, Teespring. You guys want to check that out?
Oh yeah. And my main website, sifukuttel.com. So that's where I'll have, when the online school is up, that's where it'll be.
There we go.
But once I get that going. Yeah.
Important one right there, man.
I know. I wanted to get it by like January this year, but there's been a lot more behind the scenes. So yeah, once I get I have to set up memberships and things. So once that's going, I'll get you guys set up.
And the more cuddle online, you'll see them.
Just keep checking in. Yeah.
Last thing, anything else you'd like to leave the audience that you'd like for them to take away from this chat, I guess, or anything just in regards to Kung Fu that you want people to like remember or like really understand, I guess?
I would say, no matter your goal, if you're interested in Kung Fu or any martial art in that aspect, no matter your goal, there's something there for you. So the nice thing about Kung Fu that I've noticed for me is I've been able to focus on different aspects as my interests have changed, and it cycles through. Sometimes I want to work on fighting. Sometimes I want to work on forms. Sometimes I want to work on flexibility. Sometimes I want to work on self-defense. And luckily for me, I'm in a system that involves all of that. Like I get weapons training, forms training, fighting training, joint locking. We have some pressure points, but it's not like, knockout stuff. It's just like how to make people feel pain. That's all it is. And, just those fun aspects like that. There's always something that you can focus on without losing your interest altogether. So yeah. But no matter the art that you guys do, you're going to find that there's going to be those elements as well for you. They may not be the same as, in Kung Fu, but in martial arts, you have something that can always keep you busy. So yeah, enjoy the trip, enjoy the journey.
Enjoy the trip, enjoy the journey. Wise words from Sifu Brian Kuttel. Another shirt.
And drink water.
And drink water. And drink water. Oh man. But thank you, Brian. Thank you, Sifu Kuttel, for hopping on this MATCHAT. Really appreciate you sharing your experiences and your knowledge with the audience here. And hopefully you guys took away some great points for this. So really, really helpful, and I really appreciate all the information you dropped in there. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And hopefully maybe down the line in the future, whether you are here or like maybe down when there's some updates on your side too with your stuff, we can do another MATCHAT. And actually, by the time this comes out, we are actually going to be going live for a workout as well. So if you have not already followed, again, both of us on Instagram, we'll be going on Instagram live and doing a cool Kung Fu themed workout drill. I don't know exactly what you have in store, but he has a lesson plan. He's going to be the Sifu teaching me some stuff online, and you guys can join along with that. So just keep an eye out for that. And as always, guys, remember, keep on kicking and stay hydrated.
That's right.
Bye, guys.
If you found the one, you should never give her up. I think it's the way life changes when in love, yeah. I surround my soul with the positivity. That's why I don't worry about the things that I don't see, yeah. These days I don't worry about much. I think we should have some more fun.